Hello everyone, so this is my review to Celebrity Traitors episode 7. So, it's very warm, so I had to put the fan on for a little bit, had some dinner, I've got no top on, but it's okay, we're doing episode 7, so let's go. So at the beginning of the episode, we found out that the three potential people that were going to be murdered by the traitors were either Nick, Kate or Lucy. And Joe said that the traitors are doing a great job and we, as the faithful, are doing an awful job. And Alan explained that having to murder in real life made him feel like the Grim Reaper. At breakfast, Alan basically said to Claudia, because she's such a nice person, he was like, Claudia, you can't compliment people and then vote them out. And David said that he felt like there was at least one traitor in every single conversation. Nick explained that if Kate was murdered, then Lucy, Jonathan and Kat are all traitors, but it ended up being Lucy that was murdered, so that's his plan out the window. It was quite interesting because obviously basically what happened was Nick, Lucy and Kate were all separately standing on the chessboard, and if they turned around and saw Claudia, they obviously survived, and if they turned around and saw the three traitors, obviously they were out of the game. So Lucy turned round and she saw the three traitors reveal themselves. She was very shocked. She wasn't very happy with them, and she even said to Kat, she was like, I'm not happy with you. So on the way, when Kat left, she was like, I'm sorry, and she was like, yeah, that's not good enough. She was like, that she let her emotions cloud things, and she was even shocked that Alan actually did end up killing Paloma off in literally the first episode. She said it was a real shock and she felt betrayed, but actually now a relief that she knows who the traitors are. She just can't believe it. And then as soon as Kate came in for breakfast, obviously she was the final survivor, she basically looked at everyone and was like, have you all just been talking about how I'm a traitor? Because no one kind of was, excited or said welcome back. So she just, felt really bad. And no one was happy to see Kate, and she was like, oh, well, that's great. Joe also gave Kate a tip that maybe she needs to be a bit more vocal and share some of her thoughts, because obviously otherwise they're seeing her as a potential traitor. In terms of the mission was called Off Balance, and straight away Kate was like, well, I'm guessing that's going to be something that, we have to balance well in. And Alan was like, yeah, that's what Claudia just said, with Joe saying, well, at least you're coming to the table with theories now. So, they're all taking a bit of a joke at Kate because obviously, she's just repeated what Claudia said, but at least she's actually coming to the table with theories. Bit of a, backhanded thing to say, but at the same time, there's a bit of banter, I guess. Joe explained to Nick that he felt that Jonathan Ross was the leader, with obviously Mark and Lucy as backup. How wrong was he? And then Nick also said how wrong was he about Lucy, and obviously now that's kind of thrown things very wide open in terms of who the traitor and traitors actually are. So when they initially put themselves together for the challenge, Alan, I think, just said, let's just split ourselves in half. And yeah, Nick basically explained that he wanted to randomise the teams, otherwise the traitors, will have put themselves potentially together on the same side. And David explained that the traitors wanted to rearrange the teams, and if they're all in the same team, he did find that strange. So yeah, obviously Nick kind of put his foot forward by saying that, it was him that, decided to sabotage the game. Okay, so during their conversation, Kat was having a chat with Joe, saying that David is going to be going for Nick, and obviously they need to catch a traitor who they obviously think is Jonathan. Celia whispered whether they would vote for Jonathan Ross with her, and Kate explained that Kate explained to Alan and Jonathan that, it's not that she's not bringing things to the table, but it's just obviously I think it's just about difficult of who you can and can't trust. And I think this is where Kate explained that, she doesn't want to come forward full throttle with a theory because she might be wrong, whereas someone like Alan was completely wrong about Mark. So, he's still in the game, but it's like he's now seen as a bit of a weakness because he keeps getting the guesses wrong. So, yeah, she was like, she doesn't really want to push the idea of someone, but Alan said he's now pushing the idea of Joe because he thinks that Joe could potentially be a traitor. So Joe then ended up having a conversation with Kate. So I think Kate had just finished talking to Jonathan and Alan, who she didn't realise both of which are traitors. And she spoke to Joe and was basically explaining what she told the both of them about, not being able to pass her ideas forward or, not trying to gun for people. and Joe basically asked her who it was that she had that conversation with, and she said, well, Jonathan and Alan, you know. And he was like, well, you don't really know, but you could have literally been talking to two traitors, kind of giving off your, you know, vibes or your ideas or your theories or whatever. And she was like, yeah, true. Alan and Jonathan, again, they had a quick chat. They said they needed to try and vote Joe out, because obviously he's not going to let the whole thing go about Jonathan Ross being a traitor. Kat and Alan, they were obviously in the car together on the way to the mission. So I think she said that they'd never been in the car together, and he was like, right, well, we can plan, you know, we can talk tactics in the car. And Kat also explained to Alan about the conversation that Kate was having, where she was speaking with Jonathan and Alan, and Joe basically said that, you know, she could have been talking with two traitors, which obviously she was. So yeah, Kat basically said that Joe is very, very smart. And then Alan asked her why she wouldn't vote for Joe as well, and Kat said, I can't vote for Joe because if he doesn't leave and, you know, he's not banished at the round table, he's going to end up coming for him. And Jonathan said, you know, to the people that were in his car, I think Celia and Joe, that both Alan and Kat stayed under the radar. So I think Alan and Kat were coming for Jonathan. Jonathan was trying to get people to vote for Alan and Kat, but I think, yeah, the case against Alan and Kat, it was just because they were quiet. They haven't done anything necessarily wrong. They just haven't done anything. They haven't done anything necessarily right, but they haven't done anything that badly wrong that people are looking at them as traitors. So in terms of this mission, the mission was Wobble Bridge, and basically in pairs what they had to do is just walk across. So one of them would walk across, one of them would be at the other end, you know, at the top, like leading them on kind of thing. And there was up to 10k up for grabs for the three pairings. And basically at the end, the person at the other side of the bridge would have to catch the money bag if the person on the bridge was able to carry it along. It's a bit of a stretch off the bridge, and the bridge was very wobbly. But all of the pairings managed to get their person to the end, and all of the pairings managed to obviously catch that money at the end. So in terms of the pairings, you had Alan and Kate. Kate was kind of acting like mum on sports day, kind of egging him on and, you know, getting him along. He did scream a little bit. He got along, and Kate put Alan to obviously win the shield, saying that he earned it. Up next was Jonathan and Nick. Jonathan didn't really want to go across the bridge, so Nick did it. And again, Jonathan gave the shield from Alan to Nick. And Joe also explained that Nick was going along the bridge so elegantly, and the bridge didn't even move. The third pairing was Celia and Kat. So Kat was kind of screaming along the way, but again, she managed to get to the end. Celia gave the shield to Kat. And I think the final pairing was Joe and David. And I think at first Jonathan was basically saying, look, I really want Joe to fall over, because if he falls off, then Kat gets the shield, which means you've taken it away from a faithful. And also it'd be quite funny to see Joe fall over. But anyway, he got to the end, and yeah, David gave the shield to Joe. So thankfully, Joe managed to have the shield for that night. So the only reason that Joe would go home is if he was banished at the round table, if enough people voted for him, which obviously we found out was not the case. So moving on to the pre-round table, so we're now here. Celia said she couldn't not wish everybody well. Joe explained they'd bonded so much that's obviously probably what's so difficult in them finding the traitors. And Alan said to Kat that Joe's going to probably come for Jonathan Ross at the round table, with Kat saying it's going to be difficult for all three of them to get to the end, so they have to probably, you know, start now turning against each other. Jonathan, Alan and Kate are they were all discussing, saying that the traitors were playing the chaos game. Alan explained that David had theories but no names. Jonathan Ross was very suspicious of David, and Nick explained to Joe that David was definitely going to bring him up to the table. And Celia and Alan also had a quick chat, with Celia saying that she's going to stick to her original thought of going for Jonathan, but she's now a bit worried because she's not 100% sure if Alan is or isn't a traitor, and she's not sure if he's now going to feed that information back to his other traitor friends if he is a traitor. Nick explained that David was still suspicious of him, switching up the groups. Kate explained that David is still suspicious of her as well. Jonathan said he doesn't think Cecilia's a traitor, potentially could be Alan. And Joe also mentioned that Alan forgot about having a shield. And Jonathan also said that the traitors need to start mentioning each other's names, because they're going to have to, otherwise, you know, that's when it's going to start getting a bit messy. So I will do part 2 of episode 7's review in the next part of my video, but we're going to go up to here where Joe said he has nothing to lose, so we'll do that in the next part.